The Ethiopian government and Tigrayan authorities have finally agreed on a ceasefire to end a 2-year conflict that has caused a humanitarian crisis in the region with a population of 6 million. The agreement was reached in South Africa's capital on November the 2nd, where negotiations have been going on behind closed doors for the past week. The African Union mediator in peace talks, former Nigerian President Olusegun announced that both parties in the Ethiopian conflict have formally agreed to the cessation of hostilities as well as the systemic, orderly, smooth and coordinated disarmament.
Now, former President Obasanjo said the agreement provided for security for all concerned within and outside Ethiopia, and that a high-level African Union panel would monitor and supervise the implementation of the agreement. A previous 5-month ceasefire between the Ethiopian government and Tigrayan forces broke down in August, leading to fresh clashes. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed sent government troops into Tigray in November 2020 after accusing the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, of attacking military camps. And now join us for the conversation all the way from Canada, Toronto. We have Yohannes, Abraha, a former Ethiopian diplomat. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so Yohannes, today marks 2 years since a war broke out in Ethiopia's Tigray region between Tigrayan forces and the federal government. Now, what does this cessation mean for a lot of Tigrayans, Ethiopians, and all those who have suffered the brunt of the Cold War?
Thank you very much. So, as you stated, today marks the 2nd year of the start of the genocidal war in Tigray. In fact, we are demonstrating today on the occasion of the 2nd year of this start of the war in Tigray. You can maybe you can hear the shout out behind me. So yes, there was an agreement in South Africa, as you remember it. The government of Tigray, the people of Tigray, we have been calling for a peaceful resolution since the outset, since the new government came into Ethiopia, but it was dashed by the irresponsible, I would say, act of the Ethiopian government because they were refusing each and every peaceful initiative. But finally, we have one. We have one agreement on the ground now. But as you said, the people of Tigray, of course, who were preaching for peace, and I guess the people of Ethiopia as well, the whole Horn of Africa, were calling for a peaceful resolution. Having a peace is something, but there is an elephant in the room. That elephant in the room is the implementation. The implementation, as you have followed the signing argument, the chief mediator, former President Olusegun clearly stated that this is only the early stage. This is only the beginning. But the implementation, getting into the details, is something else. But having the peace agreement by itself is sort of relief for us, the Tigrayans, as well.
Now, Yohannes, talking about the elephant in the room, that's the implementation. We've been there before. A truce was declared in March, but we all know what will happen. It broke down. So what are the guarantees that this time around, this ceasefire will hold? And let's talk about the major contending issues. The suffering in Tigray has been, it's been terrible, to say the least. So what's the current situation? And with restoration of services and humanitarian aid into those that desperately need these supplies?
Absolutely. Thank you for raising that important point. It's been, in fact, 2 years since the authorities in Ethiopia promising to make peace, but at the same time breaking their words as well. It's been given to the UN officials. It's been given to the special envoys in Africa and elsewhere. But the problem, the challenge was that honoring the agreement, honoring their words. And this time around as well, we have this important agreement. But at the same time, we're going to see whether these parties will honor their words, the agreement that they have signed on the papers. It's very important. You mentioned March, the cessation of hostilities. In fact, it was a truce, humanitarian truce. It was reached by the Ethiopian government in August of this year. And this time around, we do have the observers, I would say guarantors as well, not only from Africa, but elsewhere as well, including the United States, including the UN, and IGAD as well, African Union. So these are all not only witnesses, but as well guarantors as far as I'm concerned. So these entities need to pressurize, especially the Ethiopian government, especially the Eritrean regime, so that we can have peace on the ground. But as you mentioned it, the last 2 years, it was a hell for the people of Tigray. More than 600,000 people, civilians, were killed in Tigray, and every sort of weapons, including the weapons of hunger, including the weapons of medication, including the blockage of communication, all sorts of weapons were used against the people of Tigray. So it was a hell. That's why we need the peace to prevail in Tigray.
Okay, now the peace talks were between the Ethiopian government and Tigray region. You mentioned Eritrea, which has been involved in this war. What's the status? What are they going to also follow with this truce? Can you hear me, Yohannes? Okay, unfortunately, we do not have Yohannes again, but we're dealing with the issues of the truce and ceasefire between Ethiopia and the Tigray region. I think it's a bit of a sigh of relief, finally.
Yes, it's a sigh of relief. And you raised a very important question on the involvement of Eritrean forces, but I believe they were involved on the invitation of Addis Ababa. So I guess President Abiy Ahmed will just have to put a call to Isaias Afwerki and say, you know, we signed a deal, you can back off now. So let's hope, for the sake of the long-suffering people of Ethiopia, that this truce does hold.
Definitely.
Okay, this is where we come to an end of today's program in the first half of the show. We did talk about the sentencing in France of a former Liberian warlord. We just talked about the recent peace deal that was signed between Ethiopia and the Tigrayan authorities in South Africa. And Gbenga Aborowa, thank you very much for being a part of the show.
I am Rita Omodia. See you again next week.